What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Schmovie. This is episode number 324. One of the co-hosts, my name's Steve. I'm here as always with
Ron
and John.
That sounded like one of those pre-recorded things. Like you call into like
right.
You have a collect call from Ron.
Yeah.
Well, no. One day you'll send out a version of this show where you say your part, Steve, and then fans can put their own name in there.
Right.
So it's like, and I'm here
Where do
with
we get to that height? Yeah.
Chad.
And as always, I'm here with you, Chad, Janet,
Brandon.
That's how we monetize this podcast. Just let people insert their names into the intro and just make it sound as good as Ronald just did.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while, man. We had grand plans for a special episode for Thanksgiving, for our Schmanksgiving episode. Life got in the way. Things came up for all three of us, and it just kind of put us down this path of like, we're gonna have to take a week or two off and get back together. For 324 now, a couple weeks later, but it's also
we requested that pop culture stop too, and like give us a nice break. We said everything just stop coming out. People stop talking about things. Don't have like an 8-hour Beatles documentary come out on Apple that people are going to talk about. Like, but they didn't do it. They didn't listen to us, and so a ton of shit has happened in pop culture since we last talked, and we're going to have to try to kind of catch back up to this current moment.
Oh, we'll sift through it.
We've got to get to this moment because in the next like week or two, like there's some big moments.
I was trudging to the moment.
Oh, I see it. That
was like a hi-ho kind of thing. I'm going towards the moment.
Very
and that's a reason you need to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see what John's describing. Like you can see this visual element that you just won't get on the podcast if you're just listening to audio only. Yeah. So the YouTube channel is a must if you want to see what John looks like trudging through the pop culture pileup that we have going on here. But yeah, man, we're gonna go through a bunch of stuff, man. We got a lot of TV, a lot of movies, in some combination, 2, 3 singles. Like we've seen a lot of stuff, obviously, in the past couple of weeks. Some are still in theaters, some are on streaming platforms, and some are just on good old network TV, I guess. I don't know. I'm sure Ronald's probably seen 17 things that.
Of course I have. Of course I have.
That he'll mention. I don't know, man. Where do you guys want to start? What feels right to kind of kick this kind of catch up episode off?
Maybe Hawkeye?
Yeah. We've all seen Hawkeye.
Yeah. And the day we're recording this, we have a new episode that dropped too. So that's timely. Good call.
Yeah.
So tell me, Ronald, how much are you loving Hawkeye?
What's a negative? What's the most negative you can go? So here's a theory that I'll throw out at you, and I'll ask you why. There was this period where Kevin Feige was trying to make a big separation between the TV Marvel stuff and the stuff that was in the cinemas, in the movies, right? To make room for the TV shows that would also connect to the movies. But I pose this question to you. With the quality of the shows that are coming out, why can't that stuff be canon too? Is that crazy? Like, why can't that stuff be canon? It's like we're basically putting out CW shows that have a higher production value. Why can't Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. be canon? I don't understand why.
Maybe that's. I mean, I think you're right in that. Like, that's the way he's addressed it. But I feel like in light of some recent developments, like I feel like specifically what he's talking about, like with Daredevil and Charlie Cox and everything, I feel like. There's a bit of a stepping back of, and I basically, I don't think that like, because he said it at one point that it's necessarily
that it's going to be
it could. I mean, like, I feel like there's a lot of support around specifically a lot of the Netflix series that were, a part of Marvel Studios, but like, I get what you're saying. Cause it does seem kind of,
it set a standard. Like these were going to be better than those. And it doesn't mean that these are bad. It's just like,
I took that to mean more that the same people are going to be involved in making them, and therefore you're going to see more continuity with like the movies that are coming and that sort of thing. But I felt like when the Netflix shows were announced way back, it was announced as kind of a junior league for the MCU. It was announced like these characters might get developed in these shows and then cross over. And I think when the shows came out, I don't know, there was something weird that felt like it happened in that time where same thing with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. When it came out, it was definitely presented as canonical. And then as it went along, it became less relevant. Same with that Inhumans show the miniseries that they had, where it's like, it was supposed to be a big thing, but you start to understand that maybe they're not interested in answering for all the things that weren't made under their umbrella. But it's funny, Ronald, I have the same, I think I might be enjoying Hawkeye more than you, but I had the same thought of like, oh, this reminds me of like it's like a slightly more MCU-ish version of the Netflix shows. Like this show would have fit in with the Netflix shows, except for the fact that it's woven so tightly between the movies and is dealing with a character who we view as and an actor. And I do think there's something you get with the performances. These actors bring a certain kind of cinematic quality to the thing. But I also think that, like, I mean, I've been very charmed by it. The weakest moments to me have been, and I wonder if it's just I need to change the settings on my television, but the weakest moments for me have been the moments where they rely on CGI to do stuff that works well in the practical realm. I mean, this is a show about archers and car chases and shit like that. It feels like they should be able to maybe do a little bit more action that has a little more weight to it. But outside of that, I think I feel like this to me feels like it's part of the cinematic part of the story, only because it's Jeremy Renner and this character is a character from the movies. And also Haley Steinfeld is like someone who it's like she's a movie actress who it's like her stepping into an MCU type movie feels very natural. So, but I kind of know what you mean, Ronald. I kind of had the same thought of like, well, how is this really that different from, say, the Daredevil show or something like that? If this is now part of the MCU proper too. But I would say also before we, maybe someone else goes on for a minute, like, I also think that keeping it small, there's something about this character in this story that I like. It really fits to say that we really haven't seen anything too grand yet. It's been more about the setting up this new character, Kate Bishop, and also, doing the thing they like to do with these Disney Plus shows, which is like answering for some of the stuff that's happened in the movies, some of the character development stuff. They did this with Falcon and his situation, Winter Soldier. They've done it with Wanda. I think that like the idea of who gets a show, it's almost like who gets a show is who's got a story that seems worth telling. But we aren't going to get to this in a movie. We aren't going to spend up a movie on Hawkeye's backstory, but this show can kind of dip into it. So yeah, I've been enjoying it. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I quite like the show. I mean, I do kind of feel like it does. Yeah, you're both right. Like it does feel like it probably fits mostly into the Netflix vibe of those shows. It doesn't feel as like kind of dark or gritty as it, because that's that MCU vibe that you mentioned, John. But that said, I mean, I just feel like, I think that's what they're really trying to do, is to kind of differentiate these shows as much as possible. And I think, if you're looking at what we've gotten over the course of, basically a year, these are like 4 pretty different shows, and, really kind of developing and delving into like different facets of characters from the MCU that we don't get enough time with in the proper movie stream that we get from MCU. But I mean, I feel like, back to Ronald's point about the Netflix of it all, and like those Marvel movies, specifically the Netflix ones, because I never really watched the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show personally, but I did see the Netflix shows. I feel like the more time they spend kind of building out whatever phase 4 or 5 of the MCU looks like, I do think they're going to come around to realizing that they can use a lot of what is in that canon from the MCU, the Netflix shows, because I feel like even in, not to go too heavy into spoilers for season 1 of Hawkeye, but like, there's already pieces of one of the Netflix Marvel shows sprinkled in Hawkeye, and that's even being teased out in the press for Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man No Way Home. And I feel like this is all very deliberate. I feel like it's a part of it could all be a part of like a misdirect, in my opinion, to say like, we want you to really focus on the Disney Plus shows that we're doing. We want you to realize how connected they are to the movies. And that comment that we said years before we really stuck the landing in Endgame about the Netflix shows, we might not hold to that. And I don't think they will, to be honest with you. I feel like there's a lot of support around the Daredevil character, around the Punisher. I just can't see them letting that all go to waste, especially Daredevil. Like, that whole series seems like it has the biggest support around it. Yeah. But I guess in general, to like the Hawkeye, the show, like, the reason I feel like I'm liking it so much is that it does feel a lot smaller and more tied into the MCU that we came out of, with Endgame and even the last Spider-Man movie. I feel like it's maybe not so much like blowing up like what could happen in Phase 4, but it's really giving a chance to like kind of get comfortable again in what I was feeling like after I watched Endgame and Far From Home. Like, especially because this show's like, season is timed to Spider-Man coming out also. Like, that's not a accident, like that's planned in a very real way, I believe. And even in this most recent episode, like how they've managed to tie in a character from an MCU movie proper that we got this year. Like, this is an example of like what they're talking about when they say you need to see these to understand the movies from this point forward, I think. Yeah. But I don't know. I get like the people, a few of my friends aren't really liking this show that much. And it does seem a little more simple and street level than the others. And
it's kind of like a hangout show a little bit more than the others have been too.
Yes. You're right. Exactly right.
I think it's a really simple explanation for why I feel the way I do, and it has nothing to do with. It has to do with the quality of it, sure, but I kind of wish that WandaVision came out later because it spoiled the shit out of me. It made me feel like this is it's not just that they're different; it's the quality of that show, the detail of that show, the like references to older things, It was chock full of things like that, and these don't feel quite as quite an homage to previous things. Not really willing to introduce things quite as neatly. I guess I think that's what it was. I think that the fact that WandaVision was such a good show, I'm a little spoiled because it started. Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, that's what it was. Like, it's the order. So like, if you're gonna give me something like WandaVision, let that be the fourth or the third. Don't let that be the yeah. Don't give me this the first and then be like, these CW-esque shows are gonna be and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that those are bad things. I'm just saying, like, if in the production value of WandaVision, like, look at WandaVision, because I did this. Look at WandaVision and look at Hawkeye. I'm just saying, man, like, there's something about. They put more money into WandaVision. It looks more cinematic. It's like strange things like that. So like, and that's not to say that this show is bad or looks bad. It's just WandaVision, you spoiled me.
I feel like that's a really good point that you're making because, and I don't know that I entirely agree with it, but it's a really interesting take that like, it's kind of like what I was saying about it makes me feel more comfortable with where I came out of Endgame, like going into what Spider-Man will be. Yeah. But like your point is interesting because it's almost like this should have been directly after it to kind of get me out of Endgame and like ramp up to like the scope of specifically the scope of like Loki and WandaVision.
Yes.
And what they were doing, especially going into a Spider-Man movie that has, multiverses in its, in its plot synopsis, so that's a really interesting take. And I think that part of that probably also goes with like the character though that the show is about.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're talking about, Wanda Maximoff versus Hawkeye. Like, I feel like what their powers are, what their skills are, that conversation would like partially dictate like what the scope of the show felt like. Kind of sort of how like Black Widow the movie, while it had some really great action sequences, like it feels small compared to like, I haven't seen it yet, but like compared to like the Eternals or compared to like even Shang-Chi, like these movies that have this larger scope, this mystical, this fantastical element to it, that a character like Black Widow or Hawkeye just won't have on their day-to-day life, you know, in their day-to-day life. I don't know.
I like Hawkeye though. I like Hawkeye the character. He's not the Kate Bishop is the character that's making me the most uncomfortable. I really like. I love Hawkeye. I actually think he's incredible on screen. I love like the way he is. Like he's a damaged, grizzled man that's like trying to balance, you know, who he was with who he's trying to be now. I love that. It's just Kate Bishop is like sticks out like a sore thumb to me. I have a hard time watching her.
I feel like almost so much that it's as much as I think maybe episode 3 and 4, Jeremy Renner had more to do. But in the first couple episodes, I was like, oh, this is basically Kate Bishop, the show, and he's sort of like going to be the supporting character, and I was fine with that. See, so I guess I'm charmed by her more than you are. I think though that like what you're saying about what like Hawkeye is a movie character. Jeremy Renner is like an actor who's done some great cinematic performances. There's something he does, and I would say that Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen did a similar thing. I mean, different times in these shows we've had it. Tom Hiddleston does it. He just elevates the content by being the kind of performer who can make this stuff, and bringing in people like Owen Wilson doesn't hurt, you know. Vera Farmiga. There's different people. Even what's his name? Is it Tony Dalton, who was on Better Call Saul? Like he's fun to watch. So I think that there is something kind of loosey goosey and a little bit goofier about this show. I like that there's a specific comic run of Hawkeye that they're kind of pulling from, even right down to the visuals, like the font of the credits is like the cover font from this comic, and the designs of the covers were always these very strong graphical images that are similar to the sort of things you see during the credits. So I don't think, in my opinion, they have not linked a take on a character that they're doing to a take from a specific comic book quite as closely as this. I might be wrong, but it feels like they visually, down to the last thing, they're trying to make you think of it. But in the comics, Clint Barton is not a guy with a family that he wants to be with. He's a guy who lives in a shitty apartment, you know? So I think that like the way that they've managed to get that in, to the way they've managed to give us that version of Clint without divorcing him or killing his family or something like that, they've managed to give us this version that still lives in a ratty apartment. Just that this is where he flops when he's got work to do. I love that. I love that the way that they're playing the family divide. It's not the usual thing where you've got this person going, why are you saving the world? It's like, no, family understands. They know the drill. He's done this before. They're sort of like, okay, when are we going to see you? But it's painful to him because we know he spent this 5-year period and he just got him back. I mean, there's all this stuff that feeds into it. And I think the Christmas part of it is another reason why maybe we're seeing it now. And maybe that's a reason why it wouldn't have been the first one. I hear what you're saying, Ronald. I think the order that they released them, I think they did WandaVision first to show people like, look, we're going to be doing bold things with this. But I also think they kind of put them out in the order that they had them the most ready, because I felt these things being, I mean, some of the effects in Hawkeye almost don't look finished. Like car chase had moments that really looked like just
like that, like blob, the blob looking arrow. Like,
I
mean, I loved the scene, I loved the joke, but it was very much like it just didn't have the polish of the movies, or that you would want it to have. But I think you're right that like where this fits in, it's an interesting thing they've done, honestly, to blur the lines between what you can get at home and what you can get in the movies. And of course, the plan going forward will be not to have any of these movies come out at home on the same day they're in theaters or anything, I would wager. But this has been an interesting period. This year has been like a whole lot of Marvel to figure out, as compared to a year without any. And then like even going forward, I don't know if it's going to be quite this jam-packed. Well, the TV shows will probably still keep coming at a clip. But even with that, like most of the images they've shown from their upcoming shows, unless it's just unfinished images, they've sort of seemed like after all those promises of cinematic quality, they are kind of settling into sort of a TV zone for these shows. Maybe I don't think that will necessarily be a problem, unless it just feels like a real step down for some of the characters that we're seeing. Like if there's like a cheap version of the Hulk running around, it will kind of hurt the cinematic version. But
we got host. That's all it is. We got host, Tommy. We got host.
Well, I think that I think that the show looks pretty good though in the non-CGI assisted moments.
It does.
So I think that's another thing. It's at least it's got its own little feel and it's funny.
Yeah.
And Tracksuit Mafia are good bad guys, and Echo is kind of an interesting character. There've been a few things thrown into this that are just, some of it's straight from the comic, some of it that's just an extension of the MCU. But yeah, I mean, it's a fun show. It actually feels the most like kind of a laid back show that like Rockford Files or something. That may be a really dated reference. But one of those shows where you're just kind of following a detective who kind of gets himself in and out of trouble. I feel like you could watch Hawkeye do a week to week thing where he's like helping people this gang is picking on these people in a bodega. He's going to put that to end. It's like, I think that kind of story, it's cool to see Hawkeye be the sort of friendly neighborhood Hawkeye.
Yeah. And what a surprise in episode 4 that we aren't gonna spoil, but maybe not spoil, but I mean,
I feel like it's a payoff. I would say that's a surprise in episode 4, but I think more it's a payoff. And supposedly episode 5 is going to have something in it that people are going to be talking about. They're really hyping that. So I have a feeling if it's a character, I have a hunch which character it might be, but maybe that's just conventional wisdom.
If it is who you guys are thinking about, boy, I'm going to be really happy.
I'm really intrigued by the possibility of him popping up in a certain movie that we're all going to see very soon, because I just want to see that version of him that just that just tangles with somebody.
Yes.
And that actor, if it's that character as that character getting to really strut his stuff could be a wonder to see. So I love how coded we're being, but anybody who knows. And in a few weeks, maybe we'll all know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Has everybody made plans to see Spider-Man? I've got tickets for Friday the 17th.
Not yet.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm feeling real.
My usual heroic job of not spoiling things for you, but I just had to see. I just realized, no, if I hear people saying anything about this movie, it's going to be a spoiler, even if they're trying not to spoil it.
Yes,
because there's so many mysteries and things you expect from this one that just one little reference might ruin a surprise. So I got.
Have you heard that rumor about critics only being able to see 40 minutes of it?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so like it's that much in it that critics are only being allowed to see a clip of it. Get to see a little 40 minutes of it. Because if you talk about the movie, apparently you will spoil it. It's that much packed into it. Apparently it's several layers of things that are like spoiler worthy. So that's exciting. I'm really looking forward to talking to you guys about it. Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters. And I'm sure he's like you guys too. So we've raved over this trilogy.
I think that limited showing might have only been for like the ones that happened this week or like the past couple of days.
Gotcha.
But I know I've seen some other press that I follow on Twitter, like posting that they got tickets to like the premiere.
Right, the big one,
like the I guess the week of or something like that. So I'm pretty sure that'll be the full thing, which is probably what most of the press are going to see.
Yeah,
but I think the reason that they were doing that 40-minute thing was because a lot of press were doing like one-on-one interviews and like roundtable interviews with like Tom Holland and Zendaya and like Jacob. Right. So like I think they needed to see something, but they didn't want to show them the whole movie.
That makes sense.
But I think that next week we'll probably see something start to come out about it. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see.
I'm gonna have to stay off the internet.
Other than you need to just sign out because like this is I feel like I'm gonna go see it Friday morning. We're trying to like avoid a crowd if possible. And Aaron and I were gonna go Friday morning, and I feel like I just need to like delete Twitter and Facebook and anything.
I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna try
Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday until I actually walk out of the theater. I did the same thing for Endgame. Like I deleted it that whole week because I just didn't want anything ruined. So like I probably would do the same thing. All right, let's move on. That's a lot of Hawkeye, a lot of Marvel.
That's a lot of Hawkeye, a lot of Marvel. We can't get off the Marvel teat.
It's ever present,
but they keep putting stuff out. God damn it.
Yeah.
Let's like jump through a couple of quick things here, like a couple shows or something that
Pen 15 is back. Part 2 of season 2 of Pen 15 is back, and haven't missed a step from the couple episodes that I've watched. It's just as brutal, and maybe even more so, maybe even more poignant and brutal and meaningful in a way, but just humorous and too real. You've watched a couple, Steve?
Yeah, I've watched like 3 or 4. It's just like it's like a mixed bag because I feel like I love this show so much. I love the characters. Anybody that's on this show, I just think is great. It's kind of like bittersweet though, because it's like they announced that it's going to end after this season wraps up, which is kind of sad, but apparently it's supposed to end on a proper note, and I hope it does, because I think consistently it's been one of my favorite shows the past few years. It's only had 2 seasons, but we'll have watched it in 3 batches of episodes, so it's been elongated a bit, it feels like. But yeah, I don't know. I really just love the show. And you're right, it does, like, the first few episodes of this part 2. Brutal is a good word, and that, like, the bat mitzvah episode specifically is pretty rough. But yeah, man, I mean, like, if you're in for this show, like, it's great, and I have no doubt that it's probably going to end on a very high note, and I can't wait to finish it up.
Well, it almost seems like a hard thing to maintain for too long, like it seems like,
I agree. Yeah.
With the teen actors needing to sort of still be kids. Like, I was impressed. I don't know if they took a break in filming during COVID, because I know both Anna and Maya, the actresses, had children in the interim. So it's like, I was expecting the show to look and feel like, oh wow, everybody looks older and everybody looks a little different. Yeah. But it fits right in. So I wonder how much they made before they took the break. But I didn't know that they had planned on ending it. But I did have that thought watching these, going, surely they have to have some moment in their minds of like how far they can take this concept. But it's because it's not like the kind of thing where, if people don't know the premise, it's actresses in their 30s playing themselves basically at 13 and aging it back to like a vague 90s-ish kind of time frame. It's not a concept that's really meant to age up with them through high school or anything. It's very much about that middle school into high school kind of time. So I think it's smart to contain it, not run it on too long, not milk it, As sad as I am to see it go, there's a part of me that's always glad when something I love announces its end date, because it means, okay, that they have an idea and these people are going to do it on their own terms.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You said you guys watched Dexter, right?
Yes.
Talk to me about Dexter and talk about this comeback idea. I know that this is a show that, like, it's both like, it's, how long has it been? It's been a few years, but it was definitely something that was ripe for a reboot, because nobody was really happy with how the show ended.
So, somehow they've respected the idea that, like, the ending was the ending for the show, and still are putting it in a new world. Dexter is in another town with a different identity, and it's really cool to see, a man who's completely hidden his identity, still pieces of Dexter poking out from time to time, and then one big event happens, and then it pretty much puts him back into a very similar zone that we saw in the previous seasons. I'm a big fan of it, man. Like, I was not expecting this to be as good as it is, and it is. I'm enjoying the shit out of it, like really enjoying it. It feels different, but very similar at the same time. I don't know. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, no, I think so far it's great. Like, I was very hesitant, like, the first couple episodes, because I kind of wasn't really all in on it right from the jump. Like, I was very excited for the series, because what John said, like, Dexter for a run there was like my favorite show, like on TV, like for the first like 3 or 4 seasons. And kind of where that show ended roughly like 8 years ago was a pretty low note for like fans of the series overall, and I think even just for Michael C. Hall, like what he had done with that character. But I do think that past the first, second episode, like, they've really found an interesting take on how to, I don't want to say course correct anything, but like how to kind of earn back some of that good faith that maybe some people let go of at the end of season 8, and kind of reframe it around where Dexter, now Jim, this character living in this different world where nobody knows who he really is except for, one person who shows up, and slowly how that is going to fall apart because of the introduction of that character. And, the past 2 episodes specifically have really, really jumped it up a couple notches. Yeah. To like a I can't wait to see the next episode type of thing, which is getting back into that feeling you had when Dexter was like at its peak. It was like oh my God, like the next episode can't come soon enough. And like the way this one ends, the last two ended really was kind of like, okay, you got me back. Like, let's go. You know, this dark passenger's there. Let's do it. Like,
yeah.
Let's see what happens now with his attempts to kind of keep some sanity and I don't know, not fall entirely back into some old habits, but I don't know. A great cast too. I mean, like, you know, I don't know. The only name that really stands out to me is Clancy Brown, who most people would know. But you know, the young cast in the show is really quite good too, I think. But it's I don't want to say too much for anybody that hasn't watched it at all, because I don't want to mention any names as a spoiler. But if you want to see Dexter have another chance,
yeah, you
know, I think it's worth watching for sure. And I think Showtime knows that they've got a really good show here, and I think it's doing well too. So hopefully, you know, and I think it's got like, I don't know, is it an 8 or 10 episode? I think it's a 10 episode run, but you know, roughly halfway through, I can't wait to see the final 5, basically. Yeah. There's a lot that can happen. And it's like the fact that and that's the thing, the fact that there's 5 episodes, like there's a lot that can happen in 5 episodes of a show like that's an hour long. And it felt like after these last 2 that like something major is like about to shift for the show.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah. Dexter New Blood. I would definitely recommend checking it out. I think it's getting literally like every week is like exponentially better.
Yeah.
And it's coming from a good place to start. So I think this show is going to end up being pretty great.
Well, as long as you're talking about blood and killer characters, I know, Steve, you had mentioned the Chucky series. Is that something you wanted to talk about for a minute?
Did you guys watch it at all, or anybody?
I did
4
not.
episodes in.
Oh, see, I have, you know, this is the Child's Play series is, the whole thing is sort of virgin territory for me. Isn't that strange?
We should do a
I'm just
watch
saying,
something for that.
Wow. I know we just got off of a huge watch of movies, but the Child's Play franchise, I mean, I've seen bits and pieces. Maybe I've seen the first one or the second one, you know, like at a party or at a person's house, but I've never sat down and watched them. I know they are reasonably, at least the lion's share of them are reasonably well regarded by people who like that type of horror film, because there's a humor to them, or there's an inventiveness to the story, and everything I hear about sounds interesting. And definitely the series, everything I've heard about it sounds like, you know, brutal in a different way from Pen 15, but like a fun kind of mean-spirited series. You know, I've heard a lot of people who are fans of the movies talking about really enjoying the show. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, I finished the first season, and I think they got announced for a second season already, but this is like really good. I think like coming off of that like reboot that they tried a couple years ago, the Child's Play reboot that I don't think Don Mancini had anything to do with. Like, he's kind of like the shepherd of this whole series, the creator. He I think he was kind of detached from that, but this has kind of been the thing he had been kind of really driving through for the past 3 or 4 years. So to see it come out, you know, it's 8 episode season. I think it's on USA Sci-Fi. It's like one of the biggest shows of the winter. And it's like one of those shows that grew week over week to being one of the like highest watched shows on cable, which is amazing because like you said, John, like this is like an old horror series, like from the 80s and 90s. And, you know, having Brad Dourif, what is it? Dourif. Yeah. Brad Dourif. You know, back as Chucky. Nothing against Mark Hamill, but you know, he voiced it in the Child's Play reboot. But I thought that Brad coming back was a huge get and a big win for the character, for the series, for the franchise. But yeah, the show is great. Like, I feel like it's this really smart way of mixing this like nostalgia of like a vintage doll that finds its way back into today's teenage world, today's social media, today's like the way kids are distracted, and you know, just like what matters to them, and the idea of a doll being introduced, and like what kind of teenager would care about a doll, you know, like this. And you know, how diverse the cast is, tons of representation. You know, the main character is gay, and like there's like teenage love on screen, that's just like really good to see. And it's like it's not even subtle. Like it's just very in front of the show. And the Child's Play franchise has always been kind of, that, they've kind of done a lot of stuff with, kind of being different than some of the franchises in ways that, this show really kind of continues with. And I just love how much it embraces it in this show and like just dials it up every episode. And that includes like, how violent it gets, how brutal, how funny Chucky is in certain parts, how quickly and randomly characters die that you thought would not die on this show. And, and it's meta in so many ways with certain characters that it brings in from the franchise. And it does a little bit of fan service by doing that. I think, the further you get into the series, you're going to see some characters come in from the film franchise that really have an impact on this series. And it's like this nice colliding of the legacy Chucky stuff and this new series, which really does feel like it could be its own thing now. Like, it's already renewed for a second season, and people are talking about this like every time I look on Twitter. Like people are randomly like, "Oh, did you see that Chucky show?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did. I kind of loved it." And it's definitely recommended. I don't know, John, where you should enter this series. Maybe just start from the beginning. But it's definitely worth checking out.
I can do it.
I think you should do it. Has no right to be as good as it is. Like the only reason why I haven't watched them all is there's so many shows going on at once, so many movies coming out. But I'm gonna finish it out probably sometime in the next week or so. I really enjoyed the first 4 episodes. It's crazy. It should not be this good. It's so good. It's so good.
And I just like, I don't know, it's such a small thing, like, and it doesn't even matter in the show except for like some of the social elements of like a teenage the protagonist of the show being gay, and like, how he deals with that, like with family and in school and things. But by the time you get to the back half of the season, it's like it's so embraced by the entire cast that like it's just a part of like that character's like power, or that character's strength in the battle with Chucky or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it becomes like, yeah, I don't know. It becomes like a power. It becomes a confidence. It becomes like a empowerment, like, I don't know, pedestal for him to stand on. And I just think it's kind of wild, like how well it's handled in the show. Like for a show, not to like dismiss it, but like a USA sci-fi Child's Play series, it's just like, wow, they really kind of nailed it. And made me super excited to see season 2 of this whenever that comes out. And it's always nice to see Devon Sawa in whatever he can be in, because I'm a fan. So yeah, man. So yeah, I would definitely I've been like on a great run of watching shows. It seems like there's lots of great TV on right now. So yeah, Chucky, I definitely, if you like Child's Play, that franchise in general, especially the pieces of it that were kind of overseen by Don Mancini, it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I mean that's what I hear too. A lot of people point out how much it's that rare franchise that's kind of the work of one person for the most part. Yeah. At least an auteur behind a franchise like that is not as common as you would think. There'll be producers that hang around, but not usually a writer director or sort of storyteller, so to speak.
Sure.
Well, what else? I've got a couple different directions we could go from that. When you were talking about a mix of nostalgia and kind of horror, you could go Ghostbusters Afterlife, or you could go Last Night in Soho.
Maybe talk about Ghostbusters, because I'm really curious about what you guys thought about it.
Steve?
Well, I just did a lot of talking. Why don't you tell me what you thought, John?
Well, I mean, I
don't want to overpower this.
I mean, I guess I would like to just open the general conversation about this, because I think that for me, if I had talked about this shortly after seeing it, I think my attitude would have been like not so much more positive, but I think I would have been just more like, oh yeah, this is like the Ghostbusters movie that a certain section of Ghostbusters fans were kind of waiting for, you know? And if you look at the original Ghostbusters, if you go back and watch that movie, whatever people want to say about it, oh, it's not that funny. Oh, it's not really scary. Oh, it doesn't hold up. Oh, it's blah, blah, blah. There's a magic to it. Just the way that it's filmed, the look, the feel, it's the way it's everything about it that made it what it is. It's similar to when I've been watching, I just finished actually Get Back, the Beatles documentary that I referred to earlier. And that's a similar thing where if you get the Beatles, then you understand why they're a big deal. If you don't, then you'll be going like, I still think Get Back might be interesting to you to watch. It'd be interesting to watch any band like work in the studio this way and create this way. But to demystify something, to kind of revere something, whatever it is,
right?
You're gonna be impressed by that thing being what it is. The Beatles are who they are because they were the Beatles, you know. I don't know. I kind of think that like, when you look at a big franchise or something that kind of wants to be a franchise like Ghostbusters, there's that original thing that you kind of can't take away from it, or you can break it down, but there's a certain amount of magic involved in it. Even Ghostbusters 2, just a few years later, was like an attempt to rekindle that didn't quite match the first one, but it still had a lot of funny elements to it. Then there was the cartoon that for a lot of people was like, that's the true Ghostbusters to them, like the cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters. And there's even been other ones I know that people really enjoy. Then there was the 2016 remake, which essentially now is like a remake. If you really look at the story, I think it's called Answer the Call. Wasn't that the subtitle of that one? Yeah. And a lot of people, obviously that was a controversial movie, but again, it was an attempt to do a part of what the first one did, which was say, let's take like actors from SNL. Let's literally find Saturday Night Live actors and put them into this story and let them be funny in a way that elevates this material. And again, people that don't like that movie have their reasons. People that do have their reasons. My house sort of enjoyed it and still thinks that, I mean, I could watch that movie. It's funny. I like the actresses. There's some great moments in it. Yeah. It didn't match the first one either. Neither did Ghostbusters 2 back in 1989. I guess what I'm getting at is Ghostbusters Afterlife is yet another attempt to follow up Ghostbusters. And it's yet another attempt that doesn't recapture that first one. This one tries less than any of the other ones to recapture the feel of the first one, but the iconography in this one is taken very seriously. You know, it's treated more like an Amblin adventure type of thing. So it's got that Spielberg feel to it. I don't know. Right. It's just, this is not my Ghostbusters. I sort of respect that for some people, though, this is their Ghostbusters. And I would say that after a while, it does that weird thing that movies sometimes do, that these kind of sequels sometimes do, of like rehashing the first movie. That was a big complaint a lot of detractors had about The Force Awakens back when it came out, was that it had so many plot elements that felt like, oh, you're just rehashing A New Hope. And it's like, that's both accurate and totally inaccurate. And I think with Ghostbusters, it reminds me of Rob Zombie's Halloween, because that movie gets to like the last act and it turns into a retelling of the original Halloween from 1978. And I think Ghostbusters Afterlife, when it gets to its last act, it's very interested in repeating beats from the first movie, which again, I think is meant to put certain fans at ease and comfort them that this is the Ghostbuster spirit that you, or no pun intended, that you were looking for and waiting for all these years. And I think other people might be coming out of that going, boy, that last act, for me, that last act was a mess. And I think the worst part of the movie is how they try to integrate the old Ghostbusters into the story. It just doesn't fit compared to the stuff that I thought works in this movie, which is, you know, I like Carrie Coon and Finn Wolfhard and what's her name? McKenna Grace? What's her name? Yeah, is that her name? McKenna Grace? Wow, I got it right. I should have said it with more confidence. But I like their family dynamic. I like the Jason Reitman of it. You know, like that to me felt very much like this is Jason Reitman bringing what he has to bear on this type of story. I think by the time it gets to the end, when you have like CGI characters hugging, and I mean, it gets to be a little too sappy and reverent for me. And I was a little almost embarrassed at how clunky some of the stuff with the original guys turned out. But it's, as an entry in the Ghostbusters franchise, does this kind of keep things alive? I think this keeps things alive for people. And I think for a certain audience, and I think this was reasonably financially successful, I could see this being, you know, a way that you get more Ghostbusters movies. Whereas if this had not been a hit, I don't think there's a chance they make another one for a long time. They definitely aren't going to make a sequel to Answer the Call because it lost so much money. So it's, I don't know, this seems like a way forward for Ghostbusters, even if I don't necessarily need it to be kids out in the fields, you know. but there's clearly a lot of people that had like a deep emotional response to this movie. So I really think it's very much like now Ghostbusters is like Star Wars. It's like you pick your flavor. Which ones do you like? Just take the, it's the salad bar of franchises where you just go, I like this. I don't like this.
Yeah.
But I also kind of feel, I just want to say, I think Paul Rudd and Carrie Coon were kind of wasted in this. There was potential there, but I feel like they were the least. I was excited to see them, and they're kind of the least of the elements. And I would say it brings a shockingly small amount of new things to the story compared to what you might want from this kind of return. But for nostalgia, it's like, it's chef's kiss nostalgia, right? I mean, because it's really trafficking in that. Remember proton packs? Remember the Ecto One? Like, it really wants you to know we did our research down to certain shot compositions and stuff. There's so many moments and callbacks that are going to make you think of the OG Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I kind of loved it, to be honest with you. Which would be consistent for for the Star Wars parallel, like my love for Force Awakens.
See, I love Force Awakens, but there's one reason why, and I won't talk about this on mic because it's spoilery. There's one reason why I think Force Awakens works for me better than this. Yeah. But I think this is definitely the Force Awakens of the Ghostbusters franchise, because it does so many of the same things. New characters mixed with old. Bringing you back in, trying to make fans of the original feel good, Yeah,
and I agree. Force Awakens is definitely better. But I feel like the main thing that you said that I definitely agree with is like I do feel like the way that the original Ghostbusters kind of come in to the movie and like kind of how they're used is a bit clunky and kind of like it feels they missed an opportunity maybe intentional. I don't know, maybe not, but and yeah, sure, Paul Rudd and Carrie Coon, especially Paul Rudd, I feel like I thought he was going to be more of the movie, I guess, from the marketing. That said, like, I think you hit the nail on the head for me in terms of my response to it. Like, I feel like there's definitely parts of this movie that drag, and like some of it definitely kind of loses tone in the second act, I guess, of the movie. I feel like what starts out really strong with the opening, and then kind of getting introduced to this family and why this family matters and the importance of McKenna Grace's character specifically. But I think it's all at least interesting to me, and it's all like kind of you're along for the ride with these kids, and I think that's the whole intention, is to kind of like bridge this franchise into a younger generation, with really good casting, which I do think the kids in it are great. And especially McKenna Grace and the kid who plays Podcast. Shout out the Podcast from a podcast here. Meta. I feel like the last like 25 minutes of the movie though is just like I personally thought the last 25 minutes were great. I do feel like it kind of hit me emotionally. It definitely got me teary-eyed in a theater. And especially I kind of left the movie being like a little like not cold on like the decision to do something that seems to be happening in movies more and more recently with certain characters and or actors, but like hearing more about the decision to do that with this movie and for that character and specifically like that character's family's involvement in it and decisions and writing in the actual the screenplay and things like that made me a lot more at peace with it, or a lot more positive on it, I guess is the right word. I don't know even that's how I'm trying to say, but like it made me less concerned about it, I guess. The fact that they were so involved and that it was a blessing from them. And I don't know, like that's the only feeling walking out of that I was thinking about, because I in some other cases I don't like how that was used or how it was.
Well, the technology has gotten pretty good, I guess, based on what we're
talking
and it
about. Also helps, that
it's a different,
is not a human,
right. But we're being so coded. But I would say that to me, that was the thing. I think a glimpse. I think that's an example of where the ending went wrong for me. I feel like it really laid, like when we just see the arm. And we see like a glint, like to me that's the impact.
That's the rest of it, chills right now.
The rest of it felt a little like Peter Jackson's Hobbit endings, where he's got to give you 5 extra minutes of slow motion characters like hugging and stuff. I feel like
I understand. I agree.
I feel like this movie didn't need to stop to have all those moments, but I think there was the way they delivered that the way the opening of the movie tied into that. that stuff I kind of enjoyed. I don't know, whenever they do this kind of thing of like, well, here's what's happened in the last 30 years or whatever, you know, and here's where these characters ended up. I don't think they fully closed the loop for me logically of why this character would have to go and do what they did without telling people or being whatever. Like, but I think that for the emotional impact, it's interesting to say, okay, we're dealing with Ghostbusters here, right? So we can have a character that you know who's a ghost, you know, and that's an interesting concept to play with, and I think that's always been a part of plans for Ghostbusters 3. Would be to have one or another character be. I mean, I know for years Bill Murray wanted to be dead and a ghost in Ghostbusters 3. So the idea that we have like that kind of thing, and in fact, some of that stuff was some of my favorite as far as Spielbergian wonder. There's a scene where a ghost character kind of leads a kid to something. I thought that stuff was fantastic. I loved that. Was magic to me, and really like got me like. The way that I think the emotional stuff is getting, like you're talking about that climax, that didn't work on me as much, but I've heard so many people say that, but that stuff in the middle got me a little bit more, where it was like, oh, this just feels like a cool way to visualize something that is scary and yet comforting at the same time. So
I think it's definitely a hit. I do think it's something that is going to revive the Ghostbusters franchise.
Yeah.
It already has in ways, and I think you know, its performance even in, you know, this this pandemic, post-pandemic, whatever we're in, I don't know what success looks like at the box office if you're not a Marvel movie or a Spider-Man movie. I just think that like it's definitely performed very well, and I think that you know, listening to Jason Reitman and Gil Keenan, the co-writers, and, you know, obviously the director, talk about it, it seems like there's, and even with there's stingers in the movie during and after the credits, you know, there's absolutely intent, and even Ernie Hudson's done interviews like talking about intent for more movies. And
see, I liked the Ernie Hudson sort of stinger.
Yeah,
I would have liked more of that in the, I mean, I would have enjoyed a movie that got to that idea quicker,
and maybe you will in 2 years.
All right. But I will say too, this opening stuff you were talking about, I actually thought the opening, like the idea of going from cold opening to the stories going, I was impressed at kind of how quickly they got things going with this. There's like a cold open kind of in medias res thing that puts you into the story, and then the family has to find out and end up on the road out to this place. We're being so vague because we don't want to ruin things for people, but like I'm saying they're on the way to the story pretty quickly. I was thinking we would get like 10 more minutes of them deciding to leave and all that kind of stuff. So I actually thought the movie worked pretty, like, again, I think some of the stuff in the first half is probably my favorite stuff, just because of what we've said. Some of these actors are doing stuff for, even when the ones who are kind of underused, they're still lending something to these characters. And Paul Rudd may be underused, but when he enters the movie, his first few minutes are some really fun stuff that, like, I kind of was like, I was getting hyped up for him to just be like just the shot in the arm this movie needed, and then he kind of becomes background pretty quickly. But him being like a summer school teacher who's like making the kids watch Cujo while he just goes back to his office and farts around, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, like the bookends of it, I think personally are the stronger parts. The middle part, a couple great scenes in there, but I just feel like it kind of hits this spot where it's like trying to get to that third act, and it just kind of spins a bit.
It's a little sweaty, as the kids say.
Yes, it's a little sweaty. But yeah, I don't know. It got me. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to be able to, you know, let Sydney watch it, because she's watched like the first Ghostbusters and like she really likes it. And I feel like this is even like, you know, younger kids, and like just the setting even lends itself to her like falling in love with this movie, I think. So yeah. And like honestly, man, like speaking of like the iconography of being able to like pull into the Ghostbusters 1 and 2, you know, obviously all this stuff, you know, the Reitman, you know, father son, all that stuff, like they have all this access and all that stuff is in this movie. But like there's some amazing sequences in the movie that I feel like are that it is now like a part of that iconography, like that little rollout cage, like, you know, when they're driving around the car into town, like it's in the trailer. But like that whole car sequence, like when she comes out in that gunner seat, like that's like amazing shit for kids to see these days. Like that's what I remember seeing. Like, you know, you think of certain movies, you know, when you were a kid, you watch it, it's like that's the kind of shit that like kids are gonna watch, hopefully, or teenagers are gonna be like, that is awesome. And yeah, dude, I don't know, that stuff worked really.
But I mean, that's a good example too of like the difference, because that is very much like setting this up to be a modern franchise where like this vehicle is loaded with all these features, whereas in the first Ghostbusters, it literally is like they use it to get to a couple places fast, and I'm not saying it should mimic that. I'm just saying that to me is a difference in the tonal thing of like they had this kind of junky car that they tricked out, that kind of almost seemed like it was tricked out with a bunch of stuff that they didn't really use that much, but it was just a car big enough to hold them and their proton packs, and in this one it's got this like importance of being like the spaceship that's got the hyperdrive or something. But I agree with just the visuals of that moment. I mean, again, you can picture why that was an enticing image, like when Jason Reitman has said that he had that image of the Ecto-1s, driving around in a cornfield, and that he was like, what would the story be there? Again, that's not my Ghostbusters story, but I like the idea of directors having imagery that they want to play with, and this putting it in the middle of this kind of small town where there's literally almost nobody. That could be taken as like a comment or a knock on the movie. They just didn't remember to hire extras. There's never a crowd, that really, it doesn't seem like almost anywhere. But I think it kind of feeds into the idea that this is a little dead town. And so it's almost like it's a good place for kids to learn how to use their gadgets, But they were quick studies. You got to admit, they knew what to do with that stuff like right away.
Picked it up real quick.
And only destroyed about 17 storefronts.
Yeah, I would say about 3/4 of the town is probably destroyed.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
What about Last Night in Soho? I haven't seen that. What did you guys think of that one? Ron, what did you think of that?
Say that again?
Last Night in Soho? What did you think of that? Be honest. Just lay it out real quick. Just go.
This isn't his best.
Okay.
But Edgar Wright in music, man. There's something about Edgar Wright in music and how he uses it to weave stories. Like, God, man, like, I remember when I watched Baby Driver in the movie theater and how I felt that first scene. I was like, this feels like he's doing a couple of things. He's like, this is how music should be utilized in a scene. This is how you shoot an action scene. This is how you do it. It feels like a show-off sort of thing. And what he was doing throughout this like interweaving of two worlds kind of coming together, and music kind of stacking music from different times on top of each other in the beginning especially, blew my mind, man. Like, it feels like a real, I don't know, man. The more I thought about it, the more I enjoyed it. Something about it felt off to me, though. I can't figure out what it was, but I can say overall, I thought it was incredibly made. Like, I couldn't help but think, man, his Ant-Man would have been really good. That's the first thing.
I know. I was thinking that too, and it's like, I don't mean to knock, because I think Peyton Reed is a great choice.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually, I think he's brought something to it that maybe Edgar Wright wouldn't have done as well. Like, we already know a lot of our favorite things about those movies are Peyton Reed's touches. But I was thinking the same thing because of what you're saying. The way that Edgar Wright puts together a visual sequence, he's got like a concept behind it. And he just, there's that combination. He seems to lean on practical stuff as much as possible to get things done. And there's just, I don't know, that visual ingenuity. There's a difference between creating, even if you have an idea, even if you're like James Gunn or Peyton Reed or someone who can find a look and a feel, you're still working within that CGI world of the MCI universe, MCU. And Edgar Wright is not someone who plays in that necessarily. In fact, that might be one of the reasons why he left the project. But who, yeah, there's no telling what that movie would have looked and felt like under his hand, for sure. I kind of agree with you across the board on that, Ronald. I mean, I think not his best, but still kind of amazingly done. Is a great description of this movie. I do think there are moments, though, that really get you because you aren't used to seeing him go so dark or so grim or something, even though I think he's had those moments in all of his movies. I don't know. There's just something about this that does feel cool. Like, if you've had that, it'd be neat to see some of these directors that you like play in a genre and like, this is their horror movie or this is their thriller or something. I think this movie does have, like, it's very, I kind of recommend people watch it, but I also feel like it does have, there's something awkward, even in some of the performances, which are quite good, but some of the scripting and stuff, I don't know. There's something about it that feels like you're expected to deal with this kind of very mannered world, and I don't know, there's some performances that take a little getting used to, but I don't think there's anything about it that's like a slip in quality. It's all very deliberately constructed. It's similar to the conversation you might have about a Wes Anderson movie, where it's just like there's a style and a snap and a feel to Edgar Wright's movies. And you kind of, if you like that, this definitely is a dose of that stuff. And I liked seeing him play with creepy stuff and horror. I do think maybe it's just a little, like, it takes a little while to get to what the story really is. And when it kicks in, then you have to reinvest and you're like an hour in already. I think sometimes that's a problem.
Yeah.
But I can see why he wanted to establish sort of the normal world before he gets into the really nutty stuff. But the nightmarish imagery, some of it is really inventive and great. And some of it is like, oh, okay, just, you know, you kind of expect it. But the way it treats like those spectral men that are kind of chasing her and stuff, Ronald, the way they're just kind of everywhere. That stuff was creepy.
It was creepy,
that the transitions between the two worlds, the past and the present, or the kind of real world and this kind of nightmare world, that stuff was done again visually very well. It makes you realize that Edgar Wright would probably have directed a lot of really cool music videos if he had done them. And in fact, he probably has done it. But yeah, this movie just looked really neat, and there were some great transitions.
Yeah. Did you see it, Steve?
No, I haven't yet. Aaron and I were going to watch the other night and just got completely sidetracked. Never, like, hoping to see it before the podcast, but.
There's a scene that's like going between the two worlds, and they take a club song from in the modern era and something from the past and layer it, and it almost sounds like it's like a DJ's doing it. It's woven so like it's like I've never heard anything like it before, and I've never seen anything done that way. And the transitions between the two worlds is like pretty seamless. But you're right, like once they stay in one for long enough, we go to the other one, it's like, what's happening right now? Like I feel like we're lingering in one of these for too long at any given time. And when it's done well, it's damn near perfect. That's the issue I have with it. Like it's done so well when it's working, it's working. And the lulls that it has really takes away from the pace, because it really gets like, oh God, I'm going between these two worlds. What the hell is happening? It's like a cool mystery. It's like a real mystery that has a lot of twists and turns.
And it's a good no escape situation. It's one of those where it's like you're 2/3, 3/4 in, and you really are kind of going, I kind of feel, you know, you get almost tense watching one of those movies where you feel sort of bad for the predicament of the character, because you're like, well, how would you get out of this? You know, how would you stop this? Once you've encountered this, you're kind of tainted by it, and you have to deal with this thing that you don't understand. I think in that sense, it really conforms to that sort of horror, sort of slow burn horror effect of, by the time, you know, this character is kind of losing themselves to this other world. But also the fact that you've got the two actresses, and it's not really clear what's happening there at first. But I don't know, maybe the trailer actually spells out a lot of it. But I remembered being somewhat on the edge of my seat, just trying to figure out what was going on. But the mystery part, you're right, Ronald, there is a lot of like, now what? Now what do we do? Well, now that we know this is going on, and it's like set up to make her look crazy at every turn. You know, it's one of those where like if she were to stop and try to explain to someone what's happening, the idea that anyone might believe her is nuts. There's one character, though, who does believe her, and I think that's a significant character turn as well, for her to realize she's got this one friend, that the guy who basically says, oh yeah, you know, either his sister has seen a lot of weird shit or just something, but it's like, it's cool at that moment in the movie to realize, oh good, at least somebody's going to listen to her, because it starts to feel kind of claustrophobic when a character is like running out of options and acting crazier and crazier. So yeah. What would you consider? Is this his least favorite of your least favorite of his movies?
For sure.
See, I don't know. I thought Baby Driver was great on a certain level, but also it was so surface level that I haven't. It kind of has. I don't know if it stuck with me as much. So I don't know if I would say maybe this and Baby Driver they're kind of hand in hand for me. They're both very flashy and stylish. Yeah. There's only one that has Kevin Spacey in it, though, so that kind of is a mark against Baby Driver. But I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't ding the movie for that.
I didn't love the pub one quite as much as I loved the other ones.
No, you might be right.
Yeah, I think that might be it. So it's like the pub one might be the least favorite, then Soho, and then Baby Driver. But they're all good. It's not. It's like it's Edgar Wright we're talking about. A guy who really could tell a good story, good sense of humor throughout.
And knows how to make movies. I mean, thinks about movies and like visualizes things and has, like I said, has ideas about how to pull you through a story visually. And that is something that sounds obvious, but you watch a lot of movies that are basically like TV movie level in terms of the creativity behind. Now, TV movies are pretty good, but you know what I mean about like just a bunch of 2 shots and establishing shots and no imagination. He's a guy who kind of invents new processes and new ways of moving the camera. For his movies.
So this is one. But here's the thing about this movie. I would suggest this to people. It's like if somebody's like, I need a movie with some suspense and some. I got one for you, and it's nuts. You know, like I just showed Erin *Malignant*, and she was like, everybody doesn't love that movie, but it's something that will guarantee you'll go through some things watching it. Last Night in Soho,
conversation piece for sure.
It's a conversation piece, man. This feels like that. Like I would suggest that movie at any point. Like, oh yeah, Last Night in Soho, check it out.
Well, you are always talking about like the home theater aspect of movies. This seems like it would be a really good home theater movie. Maybe even sound wise, it'd be good. Was it not?
Look, man, I don't want to brag about that. It sounds really good. It sounds like I'm getting to the point now where like I'm trying to get away from like watching things just because they sound good. But like I told Steve, I want to, listeners, I want to create a YouTube video of like maybe 5 or 10 movies this year that were just great sounding films. And at some point in the next couple months, I would love for you guys to come through and like listen to something that's really very.
I'm gonna say let's do an episode about it.
Okay.
Let's try to talk about sound, like we could maybe at least cover your list on the episode.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a topic we haven't really delved into before.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I went back and watched a movie that Steve championed, and it fucking blew my mind. It's a Mel Gibson directed movie.
The upcoming Lethal Weapon 5? Is that what it is?
Fucking Hacksaw Ridge, man.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that.
But a good movie on its own merit, by its own merit, but like
sound, yeah.
It was unreal. Like it should not have sounded this fucking good.
That might have gotten nominated that year for sound mixing or editing.
Yeah, it was also brutal.
I know he got nominated for director for that.
Yes, it was a great movie, crazy. Man. God. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I would love to do an episode about that.
We should do that.
Yeah, man.
So, anything else? We've been going for a nice little while here, but there's probably something.
I can rattle off some things if you want me to. I don't know if you want me to do this. But.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't we just go through like just mentioning like this like quick, because there's a couple that I wanted to mention too. But why don't you throw a couple out there, Ron?
Okay,
rattle them.
Got 2 Netflix things. Ronald, 3.
If you do like a segment for this on the video, throw in like a rattlesnake thing. This is the rattle.
Okay, I'm gonna do that.
Maybe a baby rattle and a snake rattling at each other. I don't know. That's too much. But
so I'm gonna start with Netflix. True story with Kevin Hart. Okay, all right, Kevin Hart. Maybe you're trying to get into some drama. Didn't love it, but I thought it was pretty good. Mm-hmm. Bruised, Halle Berry. I really enjoyed it. I would probably watch it again. I like seeing Halle Berry beat people up. Power of the Dog. Really good movie. I very much enjoyed it. That's like torturous in some ways. This movie, India Sweets and Spices, which is about the India diaspora and like the differences when you come to America. Financially, what you're doing in India can greatly affect your life in America, and it might make my top 10 list. It was really good. Another one, The Last Duel. Jesus. Okay, so the more I think about it, I kind of mentioned it to Steve. It is. People may be a little bothered by the format of it because it tells a story 3 different ways. And if you aren't good with that idea of a film doing that, you might get a little pissed off by it. But if you see the slots, Ridley Scott shouldn't be making movies as good at what is he, like 70 something?
Oh, he's 80.
It is
80. Okay, so this movie, the different perspectives are filling in parts from each perspective that you didn't see. So it's not like you're watching the exact same thing 3 times. You're just seeing it from a different perspective, something that literally wasn't mentioned in one of the perspectives.
It's like Rashomon kind of thing.
Yeah, man.
Like you learn that maybe certain accounts are more accurate than others or something.
Yes. Yes, man. Silent Night.
That's the hand signal for accurate.
Yes, accurate. Silent Night, which was it's definitely a COVID-based horror film thing that was
bleak as all hell.
Steve, you saw it?
Yeah.
Here's a problem. You will not find out through the trailer, description, or anything how bleak this movie is. And it's not one of those movies that eases up. You're going to get the humor within the first 20 minutes, and then everything else is going to make... Erin had to watch another thing after it. Like, she watched 21 Jump Street just to, like, make herself feel better.
Yeah.
She's like this...
The people are horrible. The story is bleak as all hell.
It's bleak.
Like,
yeah. The world is ending. You know what? Just watch it if you want to feel sad. Because here's the deception of that movie. There's a bunch of comedic actors in it. So you're gonna think, oh man, this is gonna be funny. This person's from The Office. This person's from a couple British comedies I know. This person's from... No, it is not funny in that way. It has moments of it, but no. Ron's Gone Wrong. I really enjoyed that.
That's just a statement about this show.
Yeah. Ron's Gone Wrong, man. Ron's Gone Wrong. But yeah, very, very fun movie.
Spin-off of Movie Schmovie.
Really fun movie. Worth checking out. Very cool commentary on technology. A24's The Humans on Showtime. Another bleak movie. I didn't know that was gonna happen. Lake Mungo, because you suggested it,
yes,
Steve.
I watched it too.
What a weird ass movie, man.
Yeah, very strange and moody, and I totally agreed, Steve. The atmosphere and the way it used the found footage or mockumentary format was like, it was a perfect way to make this story creepy. Have we talked about it since I've seen it on an episode, or did we talk about it off mic? Because there's that one moment in that truly is like a shit your pants kind of moment, where it's like it's training your eye to look for something, and then when you see, and I saw the thing before they commented on the thing, and I was like, what was that? And when they commented on it, I felt this real chill of like, oh shit, I didn't just imagine
crazy,
it,
man.
you know. Anyway, if you've seen it, you know.
And then 3 HBO. This is my homage to HBO right now. So
boom, 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 go.
8-Bit Christmas.
Homage box office.
8-Bit Christmas. Very good movie. Please see it. Very cool. It feels like a modern classic.
Quick comment. I agree. It is going to be a classic Christmas movie. No, you're not crazy. It's great.
It's
going to be something that like I'll watch every year, I think.
Yes. It's so great. Good. Season 2 of Love Life. Perfection. And then Mindy Kaling's The Sex Lives of College Girls.
Girls, yeah.
So fucking good. It should not have been as good as it was, and it was so good. The perspective is new, and it feels like a tropey sort of thing, because if you watch the standouts, Timothée Chalamet's sister, incredible in it, and the cast is just really cool, very diverse. Touches on a bunch of stuff with economics and sexuality, and so that's what I've been watching lately.
You mentioned Zoom or the social media, whatever. One of the movies you mentioned, you said was kind of a COVID era thing. Maybe that's all you were talking about.
Silent Night.
Silent Night.
But it made me think about Host, which is another COVID era movie that we watched.
I love that movie.
But it reminded me of here's my pitch for a COVID era comedy. A guy who is having all these Zoom conversations with his family, and then gradually realizes that they're actually all in one place, and he's the only one who's not at the house with them.
I'd watch it.
They're pretending to be in different locations, but somebody walks through in the background or something, and then he realizes that they've all been together this whole time.
Oh man,
damn.
Wasn't invited. All right, Steve. What else have you seen?
Let me go through a couple real quick. I think Ronald may have seen one or two of these. I finally saw Love Hard on Netflix. Holiday.
So good.
Another good Netflix rom-com. I love rom-coms. It's a quiet, like, genre that I will always love and I always go back to. And we don't get a lot of great rom-coms anymore. And this one was that I thought was like at least a very good one.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not great, but you know, I think
it was entertaining, man.
I really like Jimmy O Yang, and I think he's really great and charming in the show, and it's like a different role for him.
Yeah.
And I thought it worked really well. I too, again, just to say it one more time, 8-Bit Christmas was great. Check it out, HBO Max. I love Steve Zahn, and I love how much of Steve Zahn I'm seeing recently.
Yeah.
So he's in this movie as the father.
He's
in our
he's
80s
a guy
flashback.
whose name is primed for one of those Renaissance puns.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The Steve Renaissance.
Oh.
And he's Renaissance. I mean, come on.
And he's kind of in it because he's got the White Lotus. He's got this. He's going to be in that George and Tammy Faye miniseries with Jessica Chastain and Michael Shannon. And he's got something else that I just heard him on a podcast. He was talking about something else that he just shot that seemed like it could be a big thing.
His name was mentioned in something else that was already a project I was interested in.
Yes,
and then his name came up. So
I love him. Love him.
He's amazing.
So good. The Jagged documentary also on HBO Max. Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill.
I wanted to see that. How was it?
I thought it was really good. I mean, especially that album, you know, kind of hitting right at my sweet spot at that age and that time in my life. Really kind of interesting to hear more about her rise in pop culture, in the music history, where she goes down in the history books, and like especially of that era, like the MTV era of it all. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good, doc. Something I saw that I thought was fucking hilarious, and I can't wait until the next one comes out next week, was South Park post-COVID.
It was good.
Oh my God, Ronald. It was, I mean, I haven't been like super into South Park in a long time.
Yeah, me either.
But I just like fumbled up, you know, and watched it one morning, and I was dying. Like I was laughing so hard.
Okay. I'll check it out.
And partially because I hadn't watched South Park in so long. I saw the other special they had like last year or whatever it was. And I thought that was good, but this one was like, I thought was very good.
Okay.
And the next one of these Paramount Plus TV movies comes out, I think, next Thursday. So it's like South Park post-COVID, COVID returns is what the next one's called. So
well, I mean, even when I was religiously watching that show, I would feel like there would be just kind of decent episodes, and then there'd be the ones where they would really hit something out of the park and find some new thing. So I feel like that makes sense. But those are brilliant guys. They're super funny.
They're so smart.
And it is a Simpsons type concept or whatever, a Weird Al, an SNL. It's one of those concepts that as long as you can keep it somewhat fresh, you can, if you stay on that same edge, it doesn't matter what's changing in the culture, because you're still going to be going for, you know what I mean? You've still got that same point of view that the show has. So no, I kind of fell out of South Park many years ago, but every time I hear what they're doing, I've been impressed in recent years to hear like they're still trying new shit all the time and kind of taking on almost a more epic feel, like really, you know, and plus that show's been around forever now too.
It has been.
Oh my God.
It's like a golden oldie now, you know?
Yeah, it's, man. And the rate at which they're able to kind of like inject their take on what's happening like yesterday is just like, it's kind of scary in ways. I did manage to see Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City out of pure curiosity, only because I love those games growing up.
Title ever.
And I'd heard that the movie was like super faithful to the games. And, and I will say it is to a degree at which it is so disappointing the movie is that bad.
Oh,
that,
wow.
Like, it's like this balance of like how faithful to the game are you going to be, that like the people that love the game, which I'm not a gamer, but like this is a title that like I remember playing a lot and really loving at that time, and the first two games specifically, which is what this movie's based on, and it's like ridiculously faithful to the game in terms of like the look, the layout, the world, the map, like to the point that, you know, I was reading like that they got like the schematics from Capcom of like the police station and like the mansion and those iconic set pieces in the game.
Right.
And it's crazy when they walk into it, you know, it's like it's like the POV shots of the game are just like mapped out. It's really cool in that sense, but the movie's bad. I mean, like it's just like it's just a mess of characters, and the script is horrible. And but I mean, it didn't cost a lot of money to make, so I mean, they might be making more. I don't know, but if you want to see like a really faithful movie adaptation of a game, it's that, but it's also just a bad movie. To be blunt. I said I already saw Silent Night. The only thing I really want to mention, and kind of want to run here with Showtime, talking about Dexter New Blood. You mentioned The Humans. Probably my favorite show that I've been watching recently is one of their other new shows, which airs I think alongside Dexter, I think. Mm-hmm. But is Yellow Jackets, which is kind of staying in this like 90s vibe of mentioning Jagged, and not so much 8-Bit Christmas maybe, but this lost-ish kind of drama mystery series about this group of a girls soccer team that's flying to like a championship, and their plane goes down in the 90s, and they're basically stuck there. I want to say it was for like 9 months or 9 or 19 months, some crazy amount of time until they were rescued. So the story of the show takes place in 2 timelines, the 90s during the event, and present day, with the adult versions of these characters. And you're kind of slowly meeting the adult versions of these, women who survived. And there's a mystery of what actually happened when they were there. And like, they don't talk about it, and people are asking them. And, through these flashbacks that are kind of tied to what's happening in the present day, you're learning about like kind of how off the rails certain things went. And it gets very like Lost-y, Lord of the Flies, crazy stuff with what happened on that island. But there's a big mystery around it, and love Melanie Linsky, and she's like basically the star of the show. And Juliette Lewis is in it, Christina Ricci is in it, names that people would probably recognize. But that show is great so far. And I mean, it's only through 4 episodes, I think. Comes on Sundays on Showtime. And even if it's only for the crazy ass perfect 90s alt soundtrack that it offers, it's worth watching. Or at least finding the Spotify playlist that Showtime puts out every week for the songs in the show, because it is awesome. The curation of that soundtrack is great, but the show itself is also really good. Just the way it's kind of dealing with this trauma and the tragedy of what these girls went through as teenagers, and kind of still how they're dealing with it and coping with it as adults. And it's just a great news show that I don't think enough people are talking about. So Yellow Jackets is on Showtime.
I watched a pilot and really liked it.
Yeah, I think you'll dig it. I mean, like if you get, it's only 4 episodes in, but I think you both would really like it.
No, I mean, it's definitely one that I had intended to watch before we recorded this, and I just ran out of time. But I'm glad to hear that it's as good as it seems.
Yeah, it's great.
The cast alone.
Anything else that you saw, John? You want to mention real quick before we wrap up?
I think I've said enough, and we've surely given these people enough bang for their buck in terms of just sheer number of things mentioned. I guess I'd throw back just a reference to the Get Back documentary on Apple or Disney Plus.
Oh, right.
It's really interesting to see somebody come up with the stuff that you've listened to a million times. It's really interesting seeing a band in the studio, even the moments where certain things happen that this is the moment that has become iconic because it's been on this record. And they occasionally will have a little thing that comes up on the screen that says, this is this performance is the one from the album, so they're letting like those iconic moments. But just, I don't know, like, whatever you think of the Beatles, these guys were kind of geniuses of the pop rock song form, and seeing how they were able to work at this point, seeing the kind of interconnectedness of the band. I mean, definitely these are complex guys, and these are, John Lennon is kind of a problematic figure for a lot of reasons. And Paul and Ringo are the ones who are left, but like, there's just weird moments. Like there's a moment where Paul and Ringo are sitting there, and there's debate. George has left the band, and there's debate about whether John's going to come in, and Paul just says, and then there were 2. And it's like, okay, they didn't know that. I don't believe they knew that, but that's the kind of thing that's very eerie now. There's another thing Paul says in this one when it looks like the Beatles might be breaking up. because Yoko's been like at John Lennon's side the whole time they've been recording these things. And a lot of people comment on that. I think that's something John Lennon wanted. I don't think that was her forcing her way in. But she does not seem like she's the issue at all with like the Beatles. All the stories you've heard about like she's the reason the Beatles broke up. She doesn't seem to be. But Paul knows that she's got this image. She's like a divisive figure, and he speaks well of their love and kind of says, "Well, it might be odd to have someone around all the time, but that's their love." And like he's like very respectful. Even when these guys are having disputes, the way they talk about each other is just full of like brotherly kind of sentiment, and like the way they can be very polite even when they're, you know, talking about whether to stay together. But he says this thing, he says, oh, in 50 years, people are going to look back and say, the Beatles broke up because Yoko was there sitting on an amp. And he's poking fun at that notion, you know, saying people are going to think, and it's like, well, fuck it, dude, you called it. Like people are really do think, yes, it's not the 4 grown men who seem to be going different directions in this room that broke this band up. It's a woman. It has to be a woman. You know, that's culturally. So like you can see that is based in something very offensive. So I don't know. It's not like the movie just does that, but it does kind of redeem Yoko in the sense of she just kind of seems like she's around for John, like she's supporting him. But the Beatles, yeah, you know already how you feel about them. I think even if you don't like them, you might find this an interesting thing to watch because of just the way it lays the process bare. But if you are a Beatles fan, there's so many little Easter eggs and little moments that will just make you like shout at the screen. Like there's a part where Paul is singing a lyric, the Jojo left his home in Tucson, Arizona, but he's like, he left his home, like he basically is not putting the emphasis there. It's like the left his home is in a different point. So he left his home in Arizona, but he's trying to find the word to put in there, and you're just sitting there going, Tucson, just Tucson, say Tucson. And then there's a part where he kind of goes back and forth, and he goes like Tucson, Arizona, and then he goes, yeah, I think that's it. And John Lennon is like, oh, it's Tucson in Arizona. You just hear him say that off camera, but it's like, I don't know, little moments like that are nothing if you're writing a song, but the whole thing of coming back 50 years later and you've heard this song so many times, it's crazy. And you might get goosebumps and you might get tearful. Like my dad and I really related over the music of the Beatles. So for me, this was very much a sort of bittersweet, like the Beatles and my dad are kind of synonymous. They're kind of his generation. They were kind of his music. So yeah, for me, it was an extremely emotional watch, but at 8 hours or close to it, it's a lot if you're just dipping in to see what the hubbub is about, you know. So I still highly recommend it, but I have a feeling anyone who wants to see this thing has probably already started it. So
I haven't. I'm very excited to see it. My dad watched it, and yeah, like the same thing. That's a band my dad and I have that we bond over, and he's like in love with it. Like he's like texting me about it and shit, and I'm just like, oh my god, I gotta make time for this because I need to see this.
I know how you get in your feels, Steve. I guarantee you there'll be at least 2 or 3 moments where all the hairs on your body will stand up, because you too, Ronald, you're performers. Like you've been in front of an audience, you know what it's like to do certain, I mean, not to say you know what it's like to be the Beatles, but I'm saying like there's something about just seeing creative people be creative. I don't know that I've ever seen it quite laid out so much and with such like so much footage that you're seeing songs develop over days and days, and seeing how it goes when like one person clearly likes a song more than everybody else, but over the course of a few days it starts to grow. I don't know. It's really awesome. Neat. Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's it.
All right, cool, man. Well, that's a ton, as they say.
So much
to catch up on if you haven't watched it, because we just gave you so many options. I don't know what the plan is for next week, but I don't think we'll see Spider-Man before it comes out.
No,
but we'll see what else we've seen between now and then. Schmovie.com is the website. You can find all the links to the podcast platforms that you might want to subscribe to, or you can listen to it right on the website. Also, the social media links are all there. Everything but YouTube is /Movie Schmovie. YouTube is /Movie Schmovie Podcast. I had to differentiate it because, you know, it was already taken. But if you want to watch the video element to again see John trudging, is that what you were doing earlier?
I was doing the hi-ho. Yeah, and I also did the hand signal for, I forget what this was the hand signal for, but it was, I don't know, but you can see him doing it again as now we're explaining it once more. But all that's for you to enjoy on the YouTube channel if you subscribe. And if you do subscribe, make sure you turn on the notifications so that you can, you know, get those alerts when the episodes pop up there.
But yeah, we'll be back next week with a new episode. Hopefully, if we can make all the timing work out. Hopefully, it's a fun one. And I'm good if you guys are good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Good, cool. As always, you made our day. Thanks.
Bye.